Okay. Yes, since I supervise a lot of theses in English as well, I produced this video because there are some general questions that get asked frequently. So I figured if I record this, that will save us a lot of time, all of us. So the question is that I would like to answer is how to write an academic thesis in applied sciences. My name is Andreas Wagener. I'm a professor for digital marketing, business administration, and I teach online marketing, digital marketing, and stuff like that. And I'm working at Hochschule University, which is in fact a university of applied sciences. So the question is, where is the difference between applied sciences and sciences? And actually, there's an easy answer to this. Actually, not that a big difference. Yeah. So we have to work in an academic way. But nonetheless, you should deliver something that has a practical use that you could apply in real life. But nonetheless, if you look at the structure of a thesis, it's more or less always the same. So you start with an introduction, of course, yeah. Then maybe there is a part where you talk about the basics. In international context, sometimes referred to as literature review, but it could be more than that. For example, if you introduce a company or talk about a specific market that you write your thesis about. And then it's an academic work. We have to talk about methodology, which is your third main chapter. Of course, then the results of the method you applied. What's your outcome? What's your data? What are your findings? And based on them, this is really important because, again, it's about applied sciences. How do we apply it? What do you recommend? What's the best way to do that? So based on your findings, what do you think is a good way to deal with that as a company, for example, or somebody who's working in that business? And finally, we have the conclusion, which is a summary and an outcome. So let's have a closer view on the specifics and on the several main chapters I just introduced to you. So I usually recommend that you think about a structure of the introduction, which looks more or less like this, 3 parts of it. It doesn't have to be 3 chapters or 3 sub-chapters, but at least think about that structure. This is actually what makes sense. And me personally, when I supervise a thesis, I always look very closely on the introduction, because I learned that if the introduction is fine, usually the rest of the thesis will be as well. So this is where I focus on when I supervise. And this is where I really drive my students mad sometimes, but because I keep on insisting, please check this again. Please, this is not exact enough. Do something about this. Yeah. And sometimes I ask for an expose. If somebody comes to me and he wants to write a thesis, which I should supervise, and I don't want to scare them away because an expose sounds like a lot of work. It actually is, but it's not something you should do twice, or it's not wasted time, because what I expect from you is more or less an introduction, which you have to write anyway. So an introduction, a good introduction consists of these 3 parts. And the first one is relevance. Why are you dealing with that? Why did you come up with this topic? Why is it important? Because again, it's about applied science. It's not something in the future and the past. It's something that is important now. And explain why this is the case. And from there, you should develop a research question. And this is really important. That's the most important part of an introduction, actually the most important part of your thesis. The question is, what exactly is the goal of the thesis? And you have to develop this from the relevance part. So this is relevant. There's a certain problem to solve. And my thesis contributes to solving this problem, but not just in a general way. Be specific. What exactly is the goal? And actually, in this part, you should really write something like, the goal of the thesis is this, or this thesis tries to answer the question, blah, blah, blah. Could be more questions though. Maybe you have many questions, but you should have, which is fine. Many people do that. And it helps you to describe a problem a little bit. But you should have a main research question. And again, this is very important because I have lots of discussions with my students. The topic is not the research question. You could take a topic and write 5 or 6 or 10 theses about it. And they might differ because of the research question. So you could think about, let's say, AI and B2B marketing. Yeah, okay, that's a topic. But what's the question? What's the goal? What do you want to achieve with that? What do you want to look at? So be precise as possible. You want to look at how companies do apply AI in marketing and B2B marketing, or is it about something specific, or is it about how customers react to other B2B companies that use AI in marketing to use, to start a dialogue, for example? And what do you mean by AI, and what do you mean by B2B marketing? Be as precisely as it's possible to you, and you should use that introduction to describe that goal. So if you've done that, then the next part of the introduction is the structure. And that means you'd actually describe your structure. You could focus on the main chapters, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, of course. But please don't just say this happens, this happens, this happens, because it's in your structure anyway. You could see it once you open the thesis. Explain it. Explain why you have these chapters and what you try to achieve with them. How do these chapters contribute to answering your research question? And if you have no clue, if you have no idea how this chapter actually contributes, so maybe you don't need it. Yeah. And try to explain that. Use 2 or 3 sentences for each main chapter. Sometimes that's a little bit complicated, or it's not, it seems dull because, the basics, how do the basics contribute? Yes, I mean, that's exactly the question. The question is, how much should you talk about AI in marketing? Because that's a big topic. You could write thick books over that. But you should focus on a certain part, the part that really helps to answer your research question. And this is what you should describe. So if you have these 3 parts in your introduction, that actually describes the path towards the end of the thesis. And this is why I ask students to do that first, which is not easy. And I personally hate to do that, but it's necessary work. Yeah, every time I write something academic, I have to start with that, and I will work on it throughout the whole thesis. But at the beginning, I have to formulate it. I have to write it down. And after that, okay, maybe there are changes, but this is how it starts. Okay, most important chapter. So basics. I just said, the question is, okay, what do you do here? It depends. If you write, with a company, you have a certain problem to solve, then probably an introduction of this specific company is necessary. You should make clear where your work could contribute to solve a certain problem of that specific company. Maybe you describe the markets they're in, the structure, but always have the focus on your topic. If you write a thesis, you're not working in a company as a working student, or you're not as an intern or something, you try to write about something else, that's fair. Of course, that could be a good thesis as well, even in applied sciences. But then, okay, what you should deliver here are the basics of your topic. If you write as an intern, you need to do the same thing. Yeah, it's just one step more that you have to do. Usually in English, people refer to this as literature review. I actually would say, okay, it should be a little bit more than this, because literature review sounds really, theoretically. So don't try to write a textbook here. Yeah, you already proved you came this far. Probably you had your credits all together when you started a thesis. So already proved that you know your basic stuff. At least I'm not interested in that anymore. Now it's about to apply that basic stuff, all the things you picked up during your studies. So please concentrate, focus on that. That's really important to answering the research question, and leave out all the rest. Because how many pages do you want to write? Yeah. Focus on the important part. What really matters for answering your research question. So next chapter, methodology. So you have your research question, and now is the question, what method do you use in order to reach your goal? How do you get there? And for me as a supervisor, this is where it becomes really, really important that I know your research question, not your topic, your research question, because then I can tell if you talk about a certain methodology, are you on the right track or not? Is this the right methodology given your topic and your research question? Yeah. Again, you could have 10 different methodologies depending on your research question, but still the same topic, AI and B2B marketing. Which AI? Yeah. Who do you ask? Experts or just people working there and conducting a survey, or what are you doing? Yeah, that depends on your research question. So you should describe that, and usually take a textbook about methodology and really try to read that hard and focus on the one methodology that's important for you, that you think is suited best to answer the research question. And then, in general, try to talk about what are the advantages and disadvantages compared to other possible research methods. I will have an extra video on, for example, semi-structured interviews, because that's something I supervise quite a lot. What you have to keep in mind here is that it's more, kind of an exploration instead of a survey where you ask 200 people or more. And if you have interviews, maybe you ask 10 people. And so it's a different approach. And there's a downside, but there's a plus. Yeah. And so try to argue, and don't try to avoid talking about the problems, the disadvantages of your methodology. Yeah. No, just say that's the problem, but still, because I believe in this case, this is suited in a better way, I decided to go down this road. Okay, next chapter, results. It's analysis of your findings, of your data that you actually collected. Try to be always in line with the research question. Yeah, if don't answer questions you didn't answer before, but you didn't ask before. So again, focus on the research question. Try to be as analytical as possible. That means this is not the part where you share your opinion. This should be based on facts entirely. And once you've done that, we reach the next part, which is recommendations. And recommendations is, now you can share your thoughts, your personal opinion, but based on facts. But this is more, it's your personal approach. You had the results. This could be redundant a little bit because you have to talk about the results again. But now it's time that you say, okay, given these outcomes, I recommend this, or what the company has to do is that, or people working in this business or in this industry should have in mind that. And the best way to reach that is blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this is what I expect from this chapter. And it's a typical mistake of students that they said, okay, hey, I'm done with the results. Everything's fine. Now I just write some recommendation. No, that's really important. Many professors look at this and they say, okay, you have to provide something of value. And this is where you add the value. This is where you actually show your expertise in this specific field, which you acquired throughout your studies or in your previous career, or while you were working in that company, or while you were conducting that study. But you add your personal stuff, your competences, and this is what this whole thing, how this whole thing becomes actually valuable. So be hands-on. Really tell them, okay, you create something of value. Don't be too general here. Really try to focus on the important part. Think of it just, like a a handbook that you could give someone and say, okay, that's the problem. Here's how you really solve that problem. And he looks up, okay, okay, here's the solution for that. Yeah, this is what you should try to contribute to academic applied research. And then finally, last chapter, conclusion. And by conclusion, I mean something slightly different maybe from the typical international academic approach. Since you already have the recommendations, the conclusion in this case is more, summing up everything. It's a summary of your thesis so far. And what you could do is, when you look back at chapter 1.3, where you actually lay out, where you actually produce the layout of your thesis, the structure, and you said, okay, how do the chapters contribute to answering the research question? Now you could use this again and say, okay, what was really the outcome of the specific chapters? And again, if you don't find any, if you think there's a chapter and you don't know how it contributed, maybe you should check again. Yeah, maybe you should change something here. So you go main chapter by main chapter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, or 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're done. And then you could add some outlook, which further developments could be expected, what were the limits of your research, and where could other researchers add some stuff, and then you're done. So this is how you do a thesis in applied sciences, at least according to me. Thank you very much for your attention. If you want to get in touch, feel free.